Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
And thank you, Alec Webb. And hello, everyone, and welcome to MotorWeek podcast number 143. And around our table in Studio C is our writer-producer, Brian Robinson.
Hello, John.
Our writer, Patrick Lucas.
Hello, John.
Our assistant producer and road test guru, Greg Carlos.
Hey, hey.
And we'll have a lightning round, a viewer question. We'll do a little rat and rave, see if somebody's got something under their skin. But first, some of the cars we've been testing recently here at MotorWeek. Let's start with the ubiquitous Mid-Size Sedan.
Good word.
We have just finished another one of our challenges that we do with Cars.com. Brian Robinson, you were the point person on that. In general, give us an update on the where we are with mid-size sedans. We know people basically are gravitating away from them, but it's still a big part of the industry. What are the cars? What shape are they in?
Yeah, crossovers continue to chip away at the sedan sales, but still a popular choice. And I think we wrote in the script that everyone's buying crossovers, but they usually park them right next to a family sedan. So the sales are still strong, and it's an important market. I think a lot of people want to be in.
Well over 1 million units.
Yeah.
So. And they're actually a bargain when you look at how much sheet metal and presence you're getting compared to a crossover.
That's correct. You get a lot of vehicle for less money than you would pay for a crossover. Absolutely.
So what was the final tally?
Well, this one, sometimes these things don't shake out the way people think they should, so we'll probably get a lot of grief over this one just because our winner was the Volkswagen Passat, which virtually no one thinks of. Yeah, but it really came down to it actually did really well last time we did one of these comparisons. It was top 3, I believe. But it really came down to just the sheer amount of space it offers.
That was recently refreshed, right?
Yeah, but very minor.
Very minor.
I do remember now that you said it, the Passat did well the last time, and that was when it was like really old.
Yeah, it was
it's got a huge back seat and a huge trunk.
Right, and it rides really nice. The engine is quiet. The fuel economy is right up there with everybody. Everyone's stripping that 1.8 liter. It's a great engine. And it really came down to not being great at any one thing, but almost like the Honda Accord approach of being really good at just about everything.
And, when you look at it, because it has been American-made for quite a while, they're able to be price competitive.
Absolutely. That's why they built that factory here was to and it's still a different Passat than what they sell in Europe.
Yeah.
We get our own version. And, they were able to make it bigger and cheaper.
Do you remember what were 2 and 3? What second and third?
Second place was Kia Optima, which no one can really argue with that. That's a phenomenal vehicle. Chevrolet Malibu came in third. I was kind of thinking that might do a little better, possible winner going into it, just because they made that so nice. But just with the price constraints, they sent a pretty low. I don't remember the exact model. I'm going to say it was a 1LT. So it was lacking some things that the others had. And
we actually picked it as our mid-size car for driver's choice.
The up-level interior is just absolutely gorgeous, but instead of lower trims, instead of like the wood trim on the dash, you get like this material. It's like an actual cloth, and almost nobody liked that.
What happened to Accord and Camry?
Accord and Camry, neither one of them made the top 4. I'm not sure where they placed exactly. Don't remember offhand, but solid mid-pack contenders. Everyone hates on the Camry just because it's such an appliance. But, to me, it's a very nice appliance.
But all of these cars were good cars.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't afford to – manufacturers can't afford to put a stinker out there anymore. They're all relatively good. All get relatively good fuel economy. It really comes down to minor things like noise, ride quality, space, stuff like that.
How about you two guys? You haven't really said anything. I know that mid-size sedans are not necessarily your purview, but Greg, you're now congratulations, by the way. You're recently married.
I am. Here it is for proof.
So, that's kind of going to be in your ballpark.
Yeah, I guess so. It's about that time. I'm not shocked that the Camry didn't place well. I think the last time we did it, it was probably dead last, if I remember. I haven't driven the Malibu yet, but I've just heard a lot of good things from you guys talking about it. And I know they've run just a huge advertising campaign lately. Chevy has. And I'm sure you've all seen the commercials. So I don't know do you think that helped push the Malibu up, or do you think it pushed it down?
I think it pushed it down just because, we all have high expectations. And all the test cars we've had in, like I say, were
well equipped.
Yeah, and then when you get in the one that actually people buy,
but what's the price cap?
Wait a minute. I think it was $29,000.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's the way I felt about it. We had one at Roebling to use for stand-ups or something, and that was like a base trim level. And I thought this isn't nearly as nice as I remember seeing it. So what was the newest one there?
The newest. Possibly the Malibu.
I think it was
possibly
probably
Optima.
the Malibu and the Optima.
Were certainly all. They were the only ones that were probably all
sense.
new. Yeah. An interesting thing about the Camry and Accord, not to keep beating on it, but usually they score low for like performance compared to the other ones and like style. And they both this time around sent Honda sent an Accord Sport, and Toyota spent had a Camry SE.
It's okay.
So
it's all right.
Calm down.
What I'm trying to say is that they both sent their like sportiest model available, which I think I don't know, it hurt them in the long run, but I think I don't know. It was definitely a good tactic on their end.
All right, let's
Sorry
move
about
on.
that, folks. You can rewind.
He's never
and
usually
skip that.
tongue-tied.
It's pretty early in the morning, so.
Yeah.
Let's move on now to probably the most controversial vehicle we've tested in a long time, a Tesla Model X. This is their new crossover. And it's a pretty interesting beast. The big thing is the double-hinged what do they call them? Falcon doors that enable you to park very close to someone but still use a gull wing type door system for the rear seat. It's attractive looking. The interior reminds you a lot, of course, in the same underpinnings as the S. You didn't think it was very attractive.
No functions.
I think from certain angles, like looking at it from the front, it looks good. The profile, it looks kind of dorky. Probably not the best word or the word that Tesla would want me to say, but
we don't really care what Tesla would want you to say.
It certainly has
Did you
its
hear that? Tesla.
Yeah, it certainly has its angles where it looks good. So,
Brian,
What?
we're doing a podcast.
Are we
Brian.
talking strictly about styling?
no, just talk about the car. What'd you think? All
I
right,
spent the
is it
least time
worth?
at it.
I mean,
Yeah,
obviously,
right
the early adopters think that this is the beat all to end all, and we had an owner here, and he certainly does, and I still look at it and think, it's a 6-digit automobile. It's pretty amazing in what it does, going like 300 miles between battery charges. My biggest problem is with the biggest feature on the vehicle, which was the Falcon Wing doors. I thought they were incredibly fussy.
They
I think
They
there's
already issued an update
yeah.
on them.
Yeah.
They make plenty of noise, that's for sure, going up and down. And just if you're even remotely into like engineering, just looking at it and listening to it, you're like, something's going to go wrong. I just know after extended use. But they did work. I will say they worked every time, and I think we mentioned this in the road test. If you're remotely close to anything, they won't open all the way. If somebody's near it or you're close and it thinks it might hit something, it will not open.
Yeah, they did have engineered the sensors on the very cautious side.
And I think they made a legitimate crossover. It tows 5,000 pounds. You still got the range.
Which is very impressive, I think.
In that regard,
Low
I think
3s to 60. I mean, it drives. I mean, it really handles well, as you would expect. It's low center of gravity, plenty of power everywhere. So,
and you can get a ludicrous version of it.
Yeah, it's the one we tested. I mean, it's crazy. You pay the price for it.
I think that the fact that was like a absolute top of the line Model X is what really helped it, because I've seen some really ugly ones, and then I saw this one with the black wheels, like all black paint, and like the interior looked really nice. And I was like, wow, it's actually pretty cool.
Just like
looking
anything
car.
else we were talking about, when you get the bargain basement one, it's not doesn't live up to expectations.
So this is our second exposure, second Tesla vehicle, I guess, since I've been here, of that giant screen. Are you guys still like into it? I thought it was cool in the Model S, but
I think it's getting old.
Then I started using it while I was driving. I thought, wow, this is kind of distracting. This is not any more helpful than a small screen.
Actually, I think that the Volvo XC90 system, which is also a big screen, is kind of like moved past it. I think it's time for Tesla to upgrade their system a little bit. Didn't seem to be quite as sensitive, but the big screens for doing everything with no actual controls, I'm not a fan of anyway.
Well, get used to it.
Well, yeah, this one is just like, not the fact that the size is like good because you can reach it anywhere, but it's just they crammed so much information onto it that it's still not. If you had like just a couple giant buttons, that would be a lot like
literally that giant.
Yeah, it could be that big. And it's just like
he's holding his hands
radio.
apart like
that was easy.
Like he's gripping an iPhone or something.
He's definitely right. I mean, things as simple as just wanting to tune to a different radio station.
You really got to hunt around there.
And again, we only had our Tesla for a day, and I'm sure you'd get used to where everything is. But for someone who's maybe jumping into their first Tesla, it's definitely going to be a culture shock.
But real car, high quality interior.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's a pretty amazing event for what still is a startup car company. Let's move on to our Kia Sportage. Very interesting little compact SUV or crossover we just had in. Comments, everyone?
I think they did a good job with it. It's a lot nicer to drive for sure. It looks maybe better, but it's still
feel like that Porsche Cayman look. Sort
of. But it's still in size comparison, interior wise, it's just still not there with CR-V RAV4. Mm-hmm. That's probably my only issue
felt
with it.
A little cramped, and it was definitely down on the cargo hauling too.
Fuel economy wasn't great either, which is kind of shocking. It didn't seem like they made a real effort to get it up there and boost it above like a CR-V or a RAV4. But driving it, like Brian said, it's much better than the previous Sportage. My favorite feature is probably the interior as a whole, I think, is well done. And the steering wheel specifically, I think, is very, very German and Audi-like, and I think they did a nice job there.
That's the one that I think you can get in the Optima, too. It's like do we have an SX trim level?
SX.
Yeah, that's like their sports steering wheel they have in the Optima, too.
It is
I think that's the whole point of this one. I think it's following in their footsteps of trying to be a little bit more European-esque.
Right.
And
well, they designed it in Germany, right?
They designed it in Germany. And it looks a little bit like
it's
a Cayman.
good.
Of course.
But I think, in that aspect, I think they actually moved the bar forward. It may not get as good a fuel economy, but I'm not sure that's what they were after.
It's I remember looking at the road test. They mentioned the original Sportage wasn't it rear wheel drive? It seems like they're still trying. It seems like they're still trying to keep with that because the all wheel drive system they have in it now. Of course, it's a front wheel drive car, but the rear wheel drive or the all wheel drive system sends power to the rear wheels almost all the time, or pretty much all the time, which is kind of an interesting little fact.
And very European as well. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, let's move along now to our lightning round. Our panelists have 2 minutes to debate a trending automotive topic. When time's up, they'll hear the bell. Thank you, sir. And, okay, this is a little bit, very much a downer in a way to start off with, but it's a very important subject that we need to talk about. The recent tragedy with the death of Hollywood actor Anton Yelchin, where his Jeep Grand Cherokee was not in park and rolled back into him at his home in California, has all of us thinking about e-shifters and electronic parking brakes. E-shifter basically being a gear shift that may or may not be on the console. It doesn't have the old-style detents that we're used to with a console shifter. Most anything that's not traditional, that's what an e-shifter is. Since there's no
mechanical link between it and the transmission, strictly ones and zeros.
It looks like, at least at this point, we see lots of flaws in this technology. Why are they in vehicles, and why are they not quite ready for prime time? Here we go.
It's kind of shocking that something that has had that much trouble made it through into a final car. I know we all had that problem with that shifter in the Grand Cherokee. They used it in other cars. And that one in particular of all the e-shifters was probably the worst I've ever used. You got to think they would have had to have done some kind of focus group and talked to consumers and figured out. There's no way that the majority of people they tested thought that was a good shifter. That's shocking to me.
That particular shifter, which is provided by ZF, who makes the transmission, is also used in some Audi products. Mm-hmm. And right now, it looks like the big difference is in the Audi products, they're using an automatic electronic parking brake, where the Jeep still uses a foot pedal. And in some of the Audi products and some of the other German cars we've tested, these systems automatically go into park when you open the door and stop. That obviously wasn't the case here.
Yeah, or even if you don't stop.
Yeah,
I think
open your door, instant stop.
But what about the whole concept of basically trying to, take something that's so familiar to almost everybody that drives and change it ostensibly to give you more console space? But I'm not sure that's legitimate.
A lot of people are doing it. This is my opinion. Mm-hmm. They're doing it for the sake of being not necessarily trendy, but
I think that's accurate.
So trendy, stylistic, advanced with their technology. Like, for instance, the BMWs, where the M cars, where it has that little knob shifter, and there's no physical park.
Right.
You have to be, in drive, and turn the car off, and you go into park.
Neutral.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That really frustrated me.
And so, the first several times I drove that car, I didn't even know if I was in park or not when I was trying to get out. And I spent 10 minutes trying to just understand if the car was in neutral, if the car was in park, if the car was in drive.
Maybe if they're going to do this, maybe they need to be a total departure. I mean, we've been critics of Lincoln putting push buttons back for gear shift on the dash, and Jag and some others using, and Chrysler, for that matter, using the rotary shift knob. But maybe it needs to be something that's totally different from what people are used to.
Yeah, I mean, with those, though, there's actual separate, not with the push button, but there's gates. You know when you've hit a button. You know when you're in a specific gear with the rotary shifter. Not
but
with
if
those
you
E-shifters.
hit the push button on a Lincoln, it's almost at eye level, and it lights up.
Mm-hmm. That's what I'm saying. You know for a fact, whereas like this, like you said, people assume it's a regular shifter. So you push it forward, you just assume that it's there, and it's not.
In their defense, it does have an indicator on the top of the shifter, which is quite small, and it does have one in the gauge cluster, which is also quite small.
But who looks at that?
Right. Exactly.
Well, I mean, one more before you go ahead and ring the bell.
Go ahead. Yeah,
but
you can ring the bell and then we go into overtime.
Like
OT.
What you were talking about with the door open, it would just lock the car and put it in park. I mean, why couldn't they use the technology like they use with passenger airbags, where if they send something on the seat, they turn it on? If something's not in the driver's seat, it should never be able to roll freely. Right?
I have a feeling that
fix it, solve the
they're
problem.
putting in there's some kind of electronic fix reprogramming that they're doing to the vehicles. I have a feeling it's going to be something along those lines.
Let's hope to get it figured out.
Yes. Okay, let's talk about a viewer question from Alan. Good question, Alan. Why aren't minivans a part of your Driver's Choice Awards anymore? Here's the answer, Alan. Basically, we try and look at the current market where there's new vehicles, and our Driver's Choice Awards are fairly fluid. The simple fact was there wasn't any new minivans for several years, so we retired the segment temporarily. It wasn't that we didn't like them anymore. It's just that we're saying there's nothing new to talk about. You could look back in our old awards and see the last couple of awards, what we picked, and those vehicles are still current. However, next year it will be back in again. And that's because there's a new Chrysler Pacifica and there's an all-new Honda Odyssey coming this fall. So it will be returning. I believe the last, we've liked the Honda Odyssey, the existing one, for quite a long while. So if you look back and find that at the top of the last time we did pick a Driver's Choice Award, it's still a very good vehicle. The big question is whether the Pacifica will dethrone it, especially in light of the fact there will be a new Odyssey.
And pretty soon we'll be testing their vacuum cleaners. That'll be part of our road test.
Yes, it'll be the battle of the vacuum cleaner.
Back off.
Sedona's recently updated as well, and there's a new Sienna on the way. But I think more also is just the category shrunk so much. I mean, Ford, Chevy got at Mazda. They all kind of got out of it.
Fewer choices, exactly.
It must be good. It must be good to be one of the few manufacturers who are still in it, because I mean they still sell a ton, don't they? Not a ton, but you still see a lot on the road.
They spiked a little bit recently, but it's still,
the Pacifica, of course, is not in full production yet. But Brian's right; they've continued their slide. It did spike up early with the Pacifica coming out, and I expect it'll spike up a little bit with the Odyssey. But there's no question that people want crossovers.
Yeah, and we just kind of lumped them into the crossover category, so we still consider them.
They just haven't risen to the top.
Correct.
I will say that Chrysler's done a nice job with their advertising campaign with that Pacifica. I don't know if anybody's a fan of Jim Gaffigan, but I think those commercials are pretty funny.
Well, it's a nice vehicle too. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see, since the Odyssey doesn't have, and I don't expect it to have, a fold-in-the-floor second-row seat, and I still think that's a huge motivator. It's going to be interesting to see how it does up against it.
Is the Odyssey going to do a hybrid also?
Have no idea. I wouldn't be surprised. They've got the powertrain to do it.
Yeah, definitely.
I haven't heard. Okay, rant and rave. Anything getting under anybody's skin lately?
I got nothing.
Talked about e-shifters.
We're going to have to get you to rant on something, Robinson.
He's too calm.
Did you want to continue on the e-shifters or no?
Well, I think we can continue on the e-shifters because obviously we see more of them than most. I think the average consumer walking into the showroom, they look at the center console, they see a handle sticking up there, and they don't think about anything of it till they go out on the test drive, and then it's got to be confusing. And then you have to think, well, I've got other members of the family that are going to drive the car. You're just not thinking about having to think about something you haven't had to think about hard for a long time. And it brings me to this entire aspect with the auto industry moving ahead with progress and all the sensors and systems that we need for self-driving vehicles without actually looking at how they're going to be accepted and how it's going to change driving habits. A recent survey said that like 2/3 of the owners of new vehicles are not using all the new features on their cars.
I would agree with that.
When I get into one of our test cars, what's the first thing you find that's been switched off? Lane keeping assist or blind spot information. It's been deactivated by whoever was in there before because they're annoying. So I am concerned about Detroit getting way, way ahead of itself and pushing technology largely because somebody else has done it without actually looking at the end user.
And I think they're trying to keep up with the pace that
which is rapid.
They're smartphones are doing, where every year, not even, or every year, let's say, there's
a new iPhone every year.
There's a newer, better version of a phone. And so you can't do that with cars. I mean, people buy cars to live with for more than a year. So if all of a sudden they introduce something and then a year later, 6 months later, that doesn't work, whatever. We'll just revamp the car. But how about all the people who bought that car? What are they going to do?
That's a good point.
So,
And that, of course, is going to affect resale value. The average car ownership now is, it's approaching 10 years.
You can't turn over a car like you turn over a phone or something else like that.
I can understand that if they don't do it, people like us will be saying, hey, that so-and-so new model is not keeping up with the times. But maybe it's time for all of us, I'm sure we have, to pause a little bit and look at some of this new technology and say, is this stuff really?
We've never said that about a shifter, though.
Just because you can do something doesn't mean you should.
Yeah. We have been...
Jurassic Park.
We haven't said anything very nice about e-shifters in general.
No.
And I'm thinking that we probably it's not alone in its need to maybe tell automakers, think about this a little bit more, do a little bit more research on it.
Definitely.
Okay. I think that was a good one, and we're going to quit right there while we're behind. I'm John Davis, and I want to thank everybody for tuning in to our podcast today. I want to thank our writer-producer, Brian Robinson, our writer, Patrick Lucas.
You're welcome.
Slip that one in. Our assistant producer, Greg Carlos.
Just happy to be here.
Also, our audio engineer, Jim Bigwood. Our podcast creator, Bob Mixter, and, of course, our producer, Patrick Lucas, the guy with the bell. Hit the bell, Patrick.
Yes, sir.
Thank you all.
Yes,
and
sir.
We'll be back soon with another MotorWeek podcast. Be sure to watch MotorWeek on your public television stations and also on Discovery's Velocity channel or on our YouTube channel, where if you missed it on the air on cable, you'll find just
There's
about
working
everything
video
we've done.
for this one.
There's working video for this podcast, so
we're
this
good.
is also a video podcast
Yes,
as well.
it is.
Thank you all,
How about
and
some
be sure
fanfare?
to,
there
we
we
have
go.
an audience today.
We do it for them.
Thanks
That's
for
what it's
watching, listening, and being a part of MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by TireRack.com and by RockAuto.com. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at MotorWeek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.